the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Gavin, let's keep going. I know I'm giving long answers. So what's our next question?
We'll move right along. What's the biggest thing you look back on and wish you had learned earlier in life in your 20s?
Oh, boy. Yeah. I probably should have prepared this one better. The biggest thing when I look back on and learn in my 20s, you know what I think it is I was actually just talking with a friend about this morning, is I think really understanding, one of the important shifts for me has been understanding like different seasons in life. Sort of like, what are your 20s about? What are your 30s about? And I think in my 20s, I was often frustrated that life wasn't moving faster. Like I was frustrated that the 20s tend to be very externally focused, right? You're sort of building your life and building your kingdom. And you and all your friends are kind of running forward together, and you're looking around a lot like, am I doing it right? Is this like, are you doing the same things I'm doing? And there's a lot of challenges that for the first time you're confronting. And I think there's a temptation to a lot of comparison in that pops up. You can be like, well, I'm not, my career isn't advancing as quickly as someone else's, or they got married and they're already having kids and I'm still single. Like there's a ton of sort of keeping up with the Joneses, because you're asking that question deep down of, am I doing this right? I think in your 20s very often. But I think for me, that would have been, I just wish, and this is probably like a life lesson in general. One of the things I've never looked back on a season in my life that I had a lot of worry or a lot of anxiety and thought to myself, boy, I'm glad I worried about that so much. Like, thank God I was as, anxious about all of that as I was. And I think because your 20s, you're building so much and it's so new and it's so for the first time, I think I was often very worried, like about, am I doing this right? Am I moving fast enough? Am I getting there quick enough? And I think there is a degree of, you don't have an infinite amount of time to figure out some things in life. There are some things that like, you can't just like sit around and sort of like not try to live a life of intentionality and purpose and all that stuff. But at the same time, God sometimes does take longer than we would prefer to either do certain works in us or to bring us to certain circumstances in our life. And I wish I'd entered my 20s more with that sense of, here's a decade of my life that I'm going to grow into a fully formed adult that has responsibilities and pays bills and does all those things. And so I'm going to think about it in terms of a decade, and how do I want to chunk out that decade instead of just being kind of like scattershot or anxious in the moment about, am I doing it right? That's probably more revealing about me. Gavin, I imagine you're probably on top of the ball. You're so responsible.
I'm taking a lot of notes here. I'm taking a lot of notes.
Yeah, but I think you have to think of it as a decade and then chunk it out from there is what I would say. And I didn't do that, and it led to me often just feeling like I was behind or something.
Yeah, I definitely can fall into some sort of comparison game, I think, is what I've noticed. Okay, so these next set of questions is pertaining to parish life. So I'm just going to rattle them off, and you can kind of take them one by one. How to help make meaningful change in your parish as a young adult. The most needed way for young people to get involved in parish life. What do you do when you disagree with your pastor? How do you find community in your parish when it's lacking in said community? So good luck.
Yeah, I think my guess is where these questions come from is, people in the first half of their 20s or after graduating college who are maybe in some ways struggling with the transition from what faith and community looks like in college, or in maybe even that first year or two out of college, and you're living in downtown Chicago and you have a great young adult parish or something like that. And then as time goes on, I think more and more people can get frustrated with their parish or feel like there's not a lot of community for them, or it's all oriented toward families, or it's, older generations or something. So I think, there's a few thoughts that I have kind of about that. Obviously, a lot of my work with Amazing Parish and over the years has been, with parishes on renewal, and every parish wants to understand how to reach young adults, and very, very few parishes are that good at it. It's just not typically a strength of a lot of parishes. I think if you're an engaged enough Gen Z young adult Catholic to be listening to this on Relevant Radio or on a podcast, the key is you got to show up to be heard. This is one of my I got involved with the Eucharistic Revival Project partly because I was concerned about how it was going to go. That's like the God's honest truth, is I knew that the bishops were putting a ton of time and energy and resources into an initiative that would try to revive the church through a reconnection with Jesus and the Eucharist. And I wasn't convinced, that it was going to go well. And so I spent a lot of time going to meetings and leading strategy sessions and flying on airplanes, doing work effectively for free. Because not just effective for free, I was probably donating my own time and money, to get to some of these places because I really wanted it to go well. And then at a certain point, they invited me to run the project. And then there was an ability to actually influence some of the direction of that project, right? This is, I think, like a thing in life with your parish or wherever, is like, you have to show up to be heard. Like if you want influence, you can't sit back and criticize something and say, that's not good. That's not going to go well. I'm not being fed by that, especially with community. So I think the key for all of this is the key to both feeling connected to your parish and involved in your parish and fed by your parish is that you have to have meaningful relationships. And meaningful relationships is something that everybody wants, and nobody wants to be the first one to actually lead. It's like a wedding and a dance floor, right? Is like everyone wants to dance and nobody wants to be the first one out on the floor, right? They want some friends to go with them, or they want someone else who's really bold to go. And I think that's the same with communities. Like if you have a heart and an instinct for community and you're a young adult Catholic, I think you have to be the one to actually, you can't just look to find it somewhere and then plug in. You have to create it. You have to, host dinner parties and host events at the parish and invite people over. And I think the best way to do it is we never build community through like big events. Like it's not like, all right, we're going to have 30 people for a young adult event at the parish. It's, I'm going to invite 30 different individuals over to my house and get to know them. And then, they know me and I'm the connective tissue that can then, we can do something all together. But relationships are made one-on-one, and very few people are going to show up to something just because they see it on a flyer. But I think the key to both being filled up by your parish is actually to create meaningful community with other people there, and honestly be open to intergenerational relationships. Some of the biggest, most important relationships we had in our life, even as young adults, as singles, was, with older married couples who really, poured into us and invested us. So that's what I would say kind of about how do you solve the parish problem as a young adult?
Yeah. Okay. And I think I can probably guess your answer to this next one, but is parish hopping okay? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, parish hopping, right? So we all do this, right, to some degree. Like sometimes it's just convenience, is you need to, traditionally, right, in parishes, we all registered for a parish, went to that parish, or it was just in our neighborhood, so we didn't even think about going to a different one. I mean, if you go to Philadelphia or Chicago, or like people still, to get a sense for where you grew up, they'll say, what parish did you go to, right? Like it was so critical, community life and cultural identity. I think today, it's inevitable that we're going to parish hop some just based out of convenience. I am a pretty firm believer in you should commit to one parish that is your like bread and butter. This is where we go to. I also think that parish, and for some young adults, they don't even think about others. I don't think that parish has to be the closest one to your house. I think there's an ideal world in which it would be. I think also, your relationship with Jesus and getting as close to the Lord as possible. If you have to drive 20 minutes away to get to the better young adult parish, by all means do that. Like do the thing that's going to actually help you be challenged to grow in holiness and in mission.
That was the best of the week on Relevant Radio. The best way to listen to the best of the week is on the Relevant Radio app, free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.